Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We're talking about CDM. We were talking specifically about various programs that we'd like to highlight. And Egan, I'd like to throw it over to you. Tanium's been right smack in the middle of this program and certainly globally implementing this capability. So we'd like to give you an opportunity to highlight a program that would be of interest to the listening audience as far as what Tanium is doing and sort of how they're doing it.
Sure. Yeah, and for us, a program loosely equates to customer, right? Because we're a vendor at the end of the day.
Of course.
And so I think and we'll never name a customer by name on something like this, but there's one that stands out to me that is knee deep in the whole process of CDM compliance. I would say they're probably one of the more progressive that we've interacted with. And one of the problems that they hit pretty quickly was that it was a technology issue, but it was a technology issue that translated into staffing. And I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. I believe today there's 40,000 plus SKUs on the CDM APL. There's one of everything out there, and the problem is if you go out and you kind of take that one of everything approach, it's very difficult to staff that. They took an interesting approach because their focus was both consolidation for the purposes of efficiency, but also kind of moving to that next generational place where they have real-time context awareness. We struggle even today, 30 years into this whole IT thing, we struggle to answer very basic questions like, what do I have and what's it doing? And taking a shotgun approach to that can get extremely expensive, especially on that staffing side. And so in their case, we were able to work with them and help them not only consolidate the number of tools that they're using dramatically, so like a 20-to-1 ratio, but also be able to focus the team of folks that they had, so you didn't have to just divide people up and have people reading logs all day and trying to respond to raw data, but actually having a contextual awareness of their enterprise and being able to take actions as things are happening and being aware in real time as to what's going on. And it's been hugely successful for them. I wish I could give more detail, frankly, but I'll let the customer do that someday.
Sure, and we can let our imagination run wild on there, but you're absolutely right. You just cannot throw enough human beings at these issues. You must instrument, you must automate, you must introduce things like ML and AI and really get to the, finding the needle and the stack of needles and be able to roll this stuff up and make good quality, timely decisions. Speaking of which, Gary, let me throw it over to you at Veterans Affairs. The complexity there that you described is daunting, right? And I think about HIPAA as well and all the other things that you are doing in regards to having to protect data, the new systems that you're putting in place there, the new systems that are going on at DoD that you have to interface with, super complex. Give us an example of a program that you'd like to highlight that it just sort of shows the power of this capability to solve some of those big problems for you.
Sure. So what I'd like to pull the cord on real quick, though, is the concept of the contextualization, because I got to tell you, I think that would be really apropos for what we've done at the department. I mean, monumental strides in order to provide all these different elements of data and then integrate it into a common platform so it does get contextualized has been one of the predominant focuses of what we've tried to do at the department. Not only do we have the visualization aspect, right, improving the visualization across all these 1.2 million devices, and that's been particularly complicated as a result of the COVID, where we now have this massive remote workforce. So, how can we bring forward that visualization that would be equivalent to what we'd see within the enterprise? But most importantly, how do we reconcile all that information and contextualize it so somebody can take action on an as required basis as they're looking at the integrated monitors within our CSOC? And that's really been one of the predominant focuses that we've looked at. And as I mentioned, now we're almost at 95%, 100% visualization across all these various endpoints through the ForeScout implementations. I mean, we've integrated it with our FireEye, we've integrated it with our QRadar, and we're obviously bringing all this together within Splunk. A couple of other things too that I want to mention is that, you talk about some of the major accomplishments. I'm just going to talk in general about the program itself, but simplistic things like how can we leverage existing tools that we've been able to obtain through CDM that we either had or got through CDM to help us with COVID, for example, or with Mission Act. And, we're using Comply to Connect now, and BigFix is instrumental in allowing us to do that. So, no longer, do we have other scenarios playing out? Hey, before you log on, your device is getting checked. If it needs patches, it immediately gets those patches before you can connect. So it's really been revolutionary in how we're able to apply this because, we need it. We're everywhere. We're geographically all over the place. So we need the tools to work in tandem with one another to realize the outcome.
And be able to do it at scale and yeah, basic things like tool rationalization, et cetera, are really important. David, how about over at Micro Focus? I'm sure you've got a specific program that you'd like to highlight that kind of, sort of brings to bear, a great example of how this capability is being used.
Well, sure. Thanks for that, Luke. I guess, last year we made a lot of progress, as as an industry partner on maturing some of the capabilities within our products. But one program in particular that we worked on was within U.S. Commerce to support all the remote workers that are conducting the Sentinel, in the census for this year. They were leveraging our ICAM capabilities to establish an enterprise ICAM identity management for credentialing of those temporary remote users. And if you think about that use case that we were working with Census, it's based on a zero trust model, which we built into our portfolio, assuming that all those remote workers are fraudulent and need to be credentialed. And we're able to help them, stand up an entire process for that. Now, the census itself had trouble getting started and conducting, as I think everybody's aware of. They're making progress with that. But probably what I'm most proud of is the support program we put in place. They wanted to have a very unique product support model so that we could support a 24/7 model to support those any issues that they may have had with the portfolio and the products. And so the vendor community came together, all the vendors that were helping support them through this to make sure we were available both within our R&D and our product folks. And then a couple of the other programs we benefited from last year was because of that zero trust architecture we built into our core identity management products. It lended itself very well as the workforce shifted during COVID to being remote. So we were able to help with like using your SMS cell phone text messaging to do multi-factor authentication, which wasn't a need before, with a lot of the PID credentialing, and helping with the bring your own device requirements, because laptops weren't available for a lot of the remote folks. So those customers that were using our products, in the federal agencies, we were able to put some unique programs together where they could scale and expand at very little cost to meet the needs of the crisis. And probably the last area is really within our Fortify product, which is heavily used, but there's been a big effort across DoD to standardize DevSecOps and to build in software assurance, which I believe is the new attack surface, right? So we're able to use machine learning in Fortify to create an audit assistant and to centralize scans, and then demonstrate how you could leverage that as an enterprise service versus a local excellence within a development team to provide more visibility and metrics on how fast you're innovating from a DevOps perspective, but also how secure are you, and really understand that supply chain that goes into building a product or a custom application to make sure it's secure. So we've made a lot of progress there as well.
Super example. I love that census one. You can imagine there's just thousands and thousands of new folks kind of coming onto the network, and sort of what's on the network, but also who's on the network, really key there. So identity management always been highlighted as a real key aspect of making sure that these environments are secure and stay secure. Kevin, I'm going to throw it up to you. Give us an example of a specific program that you feel like maybe a specific piece of that, right? There's layers that you described there that's really ringing the bell these days, and then you're gaining a lot of capability out of it.
I think I'll just use the two examples of VA here with Gary and Small Business Administration with James, because we're doing some really good things with them, and I think really they're showing the promise of the whole CDM program, the initiatives we set out for. So starting with the Veterans Administration, as you mentioned, Luke, the organization has so many stakeholders, and it's just so large in terms of its mission scope and the importance of that mission, that we really wanted to work with Gary and the team to make sure that they could get the full visibility so that they understood everything that was connected to their network. They could get in front of the adversary, in front of the threat, in order to protect the data of our veterans. And that's been a real success for us. Because when we started out, it's a huge undertaking, as you're aware, and just to be able to help Veterans Administration get up to the 95% level, on the track to get to 100% in terms of full visibility in real and near real time is a huge accomplishment. And it just really lays the foundation for them to do even more to once again get in front of that threat. Now, with the work we've been doing with James and his team over at Small Business Administration, with the move that they've made to the cloud, they've really been a great partner to work with to help formulate how we move CDM into the cloud, how we make CDM work in the cloud, because the data, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud, is just as important, and we need to make sure that the agency has the visibility, they know how it's protected, they know who has access to that data. And so the Small Business Administration has been a great partner in helping us really chart out the right approaches for the cloud, the ability to partner with the cloud service providers so that we could get James and his team and his leadership the visibility they needed of that data. We have many other examples in terms of all the disparate missions throughout the federal government, but I think really getting these foundational pieces in place has been significant to allowing the agencies to do everything else that they needed to do to get in front of the threat that we're seeing on a daily basis.
Right, and there's a lot of super important missions out there, and those two are really important. And I think about sort of that citizen experience, right? Being able to take this capability and enable that veteran, right? Enable that small business owner to get the goods and services that they're looking for, and to be able to be confident about it and be secure about it, I think is super important. So hats off to all of you for all the great work that's being done there. Jim, I'm going to throw it over to you. Fortinet, again, right in the middle of a lot of these different capabilities, and give us an example of a program that you've been running at one of these agencies, whether it's these or one of the others, or you know, you guys are a global company, right? You're right in the middle of the ecosystem. You built a lot of it that you'd like to highlight in regards to CDM and some of those capabilities.
So Luke, as you said, Fortinet is one of the world's largest cybersecurity companies. We've got a really, really broad portfolio, and that's allowed us to be instrumental in areas such as the convergence of security and networking, to focus on things like security-driven networking. And I'm going to give you two quick examples of how we've been able to work on that for federal partners. One is for a DoD program with over 1,000 domestic sites. We helped that program migrate from a classic wired network to a software-defined one, specifically an SD-WAN topology. The solution brought the productivity and cost benefits and better security that you would associate with SD-WAN, and it also met the core CDM criteria in terms of assets, accounts, and events. A brand new one that we just finalized now is working with the law enforcement component of a major federal agency that has hundreds of locations. Because of their law enforcement mission, they need to be on the dark web. They need to be doing analytics and data collection without compromising their core federal network. They're working in a mobile environment, and the proof of concept we just finalized that's led to an agency-wide contract succeeded in meeting their productivity goals, security, things like chain of custody issues for law enforcement, and again, they're about to take that nationwide. And in the proof of concept, they actually showed that the solution, this convergence of security and networking, hit the core CDM questions. They knew what was on the network, they knew who was on the network, they knew what was happening. And then again, because of law enforcement and this involvement on the dark side, they also knew how the core data was being protected.
And having spent a little bit of time with the federal law enforcement community in my federal career, you know, that remote capability is so important for them to be able to have that capability at their hands when they're out in the field, just super important. And so I thank you and all the folks over there for enabling that. That's been a longstanding requirement that they've had. We're going to roll it over into priorities and talk about your top priority is what I'm going to ask all of you for CDM, let's say over the next 6 months. And Dave, I'm going to start with you at Micro Focus. You know, what is your priority? What's the priority they're giving you? However you want to put that in regards, number one, for 6 months to continue to enable this CDM journey for the ecosystem.
Sure. We've been working very hard to make sure that our products can be consumable easily consumable within federal agencies and interoperable with other vendors. And one of the things we realized is the function for risk management, specifically with things like user behavioral analytics and in credentialing, and also when you're looking at traffic and data in your SIM, is a common function. But yet there are usually multiple vendors that have a risk engine. So what we did is we worked very hard to break out the risk engine within our user behavior analytics product. And we're offering that now as a separate, consumable service offering. And my focus for the next 6 months is going to be continue to build out offerings for other enterprise ICAM type functional capability areas like credentialing, and privileged access management to be available as consumable services to complement that risk service that we're
Make
offering.
it easy, plug and play, it sounds like, on consuming those good services and capabilities. James, I'm going to throw it over to you at SBA. Number one priority for you in regards to your CDM sort of security journey.
Certainly. Number one priority is to move to the Elastic dashboard. And the benefits I hope to reap from that, it's a more flexible and dynamic environment as compared to the current state solution. I know I may have mentioned before in other forums, but SBA actually does run 2 different CDM programs. The legacy CDM, which is the one that we all know and love, and then the one we built last year in partnership with DHS, built 100% in the cloud. So as we move to Elastic Cloud, I like to pare down on both of those 2 separate CDM programs so that we have a single dashboard that collects all of our data, regardless of where it comes from, on-prem to cloud, SaaS, PaaS, etc. And with that, start seeing some of the cost savings, be that from some work we get from automation, from just reducing tool spend, etc. So number one priority, Elastic platform.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to seeing that fully realized. Egan, Tanium, number one priority for you all going forward.
Yeah, we're really trying to redefine the way that people think and talk about risk, because what we've seen historically is that there has been a very narrow view, and CDM is kind of opening that up a bit. We still tend to be focused as an industry on vulnerability-based risk management. We're trying to open the aperture on that pretty dramatically and get people to start talking about risk at we'll call it a more corporate level, the way the board would look at risk, and considering what really goes into that, and the level of contextual awareness and the speed to track the changes in context of anything in your enterprise, anything in the IT ecosystem, and being able to take that into account in real time to truly understand what your risk profile looks like from 1 second to the next, rather than treating risk as something that you assess on a periodic basis, even if that periodicity is daily or every 72 hours. That's simply not sufficient in the modern IT space.
So really taking this technology and allowing the business leaders to make good, informed, real-time risk-based decisions. I love it. Sounds awesome. Well, we're going to take a short break and we'll be back in just a moment. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network.